Okay, hi. Today I've been sent a copy of Relief Maker, which is a piece of software by Alibre, and does what it says in the title. It is a piece of software that will take a 3D mesh and project it into a relief. That's what it does. That's what it's for. The nice guys at Alibre have sent me a copy and asked me to give it a road test, which I'm going to do. So I've got some models that I've put together, collected them in Blender, just to give some different kind of challenges to it. So we've got two cubes. One is like, six-sided box model. The other one is subdivided to make it a bit more complex. We'll see what that does. We've got the same thing with the Blender Monkey. We've got a faceted version and a smooth version, and we'll see what it does with that. We've got a Teapot, a nice sphere to see how it handles quite a dense sphere. I'll go through the polygon counts when I load them in. We've got a Spitfire, and the ever popular Xwing and TIE Fighter, because they make really good, they're really challenging models because they've got lots of detail, they've got lots of flat planes, and they've got rounded bits, and you get this kind of, particularly with the Xwing, you've got this sort of foreshortening and all these kind of things going on here. There's also there's a Rolex in there. Not that I own a Rolex. So we're going to bring these models in, play around with them, see what results we get. We're just going to play with the software until it falls over and see how it works. On the Relief Maker website, there's some comparisons to what Zbrush does with its relief projection. So we're going to do the same thing in Zbrush. So I'll play with it in Relief Maker. Interestingly, Zbrush imports all the models at completely different scales. I haven't changed any of those. We'll play with it in Zbrush, we'll play with it in Relief Maker and see what works. For reference, I'll put this in the description below, but for reference, this PC is AMD 5800X with a 3070 GPU, 64 gigabytes of RAM. I can't remember the speeds and what have you off the top of my head. I'll put those in the description. The CPU is not overclocked, it's running at stock, but the GPU is undervolted slightly just to keep the heat down, which has been known to cause the odd hang up on occasion. So if anything goes awry, that would be my first port of call rather than worrying about the software. I have already had a play with it, and it seems pretty, it seems very stable. So we'll have a play and we'll see what's what. Right, so on opening the software, we've got a viewport, standard stuff. Over on the right hand side, we've got some options, project name, type of relief, raised, recessed, unconstrained. Let's see what unconstrained is all about. What does it say? If you're trying to make an inverted relief, usually choose raised and click invert. Raised relief on unexpected flat areas. This tells you need to change the type to unconstrained or choose another angle. Interesting. Okay, well, we'll play with that and see. Relief settings, height scale, maximum slope in degrees, which I'm assuming is, it's like a draft angle, which could be quite useful. Bevel. What does the bevel do? Bevel. Okay, so that treats how the edges. How is that different from maximum slope? We'll see. We'll give that. Pre-filter radius medium. This is a value. Poor quality input meshes. That shouldn't be a problem for us. We'll see what it does. Focal length resolution. That must be the output resolution. Yeah. All right. Let's give it a go and see. Right. So. File, new, we got one already. Let's call this test run 1. I'll do. Assets, add from file. Right, we'll get into, where have I put them? Relief Maker test models. Let's start off with, let's see, can we get more than one thing at a time? Let's have a look. Yeah. Okay, so left click is rotating, pretty standard stuff. Mouse wheel is scrolling in and out. Right mouse button alters the lighting, so we can see from different angles. Can we move? What's middle mouse? Middle mouse moves it. So where's the other one? There's the other one. Okay, right. So clicking on the meshes independently makes them selectable and adjustable. Okay, so I'm right mouse clicking over this mesh and that's become active, and I can now move that around and I can spin that. And if I do the same with that one, it's cool. And then what happens if I do the same thing? So if I click in empty space, then it rotates the entire scene. If I click on a single object, then the movement functions address that object only. That is useful, because Zbrush is a massive pain in the backside when it comes to selecting objects. I find it a real hassle dealing with isolating and picking out different objects in Zbrush. So that's a nice way of approaching it, I think. It's kind of cool. Right, let's just bung those in like that. So one of these has, mesh cube 5K. So that's the, which ones? That's the small one, and that's the big one. Okay. All right. So clicking these in the asset window toggles them on and off. So it's not like they don't swap backwards and forwards. Okay. Let's have a look. Test relief type raised. Let's try raised. Height scale. Let's try 50. Let's halve it and see what happens. Maximum slope. Stick 30 in because that tends to be what I put as a draft angle. Bevel. Should we try it without a bevel and see what happens? I'm going to leave those both as 0 because I don't know what impact they're going to have. We'll have a look. Camera focal length. What happens if we adjust that? Not much. Perspective. Oh, right. That's kind of cool. So the focal length. All right. So we needed to bung that right up. That's too much. Okay, maximum between 18 and 480. Okay, so let's bring it down to 10. See what happens. That doesn't. It said maximum 18, didn't it? So it doesn't seem to alter it. Okay, interesting. So we can alter it with a slider, which gives us from a sort of orthographic down to a sort of stretched 3D, but it doesn't seem to. Oh yeah, it does. So right, okay. So entering the number and hitting enter doesn't activate it. You've got to click into a different window to do that. That's fair enough, I guess. That would be nice if it did that on enter. All right, so 2 cubes, slightly offset, blah, 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 blah. Resolution, we'll leave it at, do you know what, we'll do it at 2K, just because, right, that could be a pain in the butt. I can't do it with enter. Right, okay. Display scene relief result. Generate relief. Let's see what happens. Okay, right. Okay, and we got a relief. Let's have a look from the side. All right. Okay. So it's doing something interesting. It's curving the sides of the cube. Let's get it back to current view. Observer relief. Right. Okay. So that clicking relief perspective takes us back to our original viewport. What happens if we bung this down a little bit? Let's take this right down to 10 because I like low relief. That's what I'm interested in. Right. Generate relief. So there's a bit of a pause. My fans haven't kicked in. but it's obviously thinking about it. I mean, one of those cubes is quite, it's a 5,000 poly cubes. Okay. So it's dropped the relief, but it's still, I can see it's curving the surface. That's interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over to Zbrush, and we're going to do the same thing in Zbrush. Where's the Rolex gone? I don't want to see the Rolex. Right, okay. Alright. So we're going to do the same thing in Zbrush. So we'll take one of these cubes and give it a little spin. Let's just frame that now. I want to frame that. No, I want to frame that. That's it. Cube number 1, let's bring it in here. And cube number 2, let's drop it down, spin it around a bit, let's spin it the other way, spin it that way. Let's do that. Right, let's just make sure they're not going through the back. No. Frame, no, not the cube, I want that, thank you very much. Right, let's just move that in a bit. I don't want them to cross just yet. We haven't got into the depth things yet. Right. I'm just going to project it with the default settings and see what happens. Okay, turn the cubes off. Ah, right, my fault. I have forgotten to go back to that. That's what I needed. Let's move you back in. That back to the base. This is my this background is the frame that I usually use for modeling on. So it's about 17 million. No, it's not. How many million polygons is it? I can't remember. But it's like a 3 subdivision disk. It goes up to about, yeah, it's about 18 million polygons, isn't it? To capture detail. Right. Let's see what happens. Zoink. Let's turn these off. Okay. Ah. Alright, interesting. Interesting. So Zbrush has approached it. I mean, I'm not gonna, I haven't played with the settings, so we've got quite an uncomfortable sort of relationship to the background, but that's fair enough because I haven't played with the settings for that. But it's doing something very, very odd. It looks like the little bits of icing on the top of one of those biscuits. So Zbrush is kind of, they're both distorting it. Zbrush is sort of keeping it flat and then pushing the creases up to meet. So it kind of works. No, it doesn't really work at all, does it? That's actually pretty horrible. Where's this end? Right, generate relief. What we're getting is it's better, but it's still driving me nuts. It's still rounded. You can see kind of there it's curving off, which is a kind of, it seems to be a common problem with any of these sort of bits of software that stuff like this that is very angular just seems to freak it out. Okay, interesting. Right, let's try something a bit more organic. Let's do the same thing with the monkeys. Right, so it's just resizing it. That's fair enough. Monkey. There we go. Right. Okay. Well, so this is Suzanne. This is the Blender monkey. If you're not familiar. Okay. Let's do something a bit more extreme. All right. Right. I don't want them to cross yet. We'll try that in a minute. Right. Same settings. Let's leave the height scale at 10, maximum slope 30. not do a bevel, we'll play that in a second. Raise relief, 2 monkeys, generate relief, let's see what happens. Ooh. Okay, right, I'm going to play, so right mouse button is changing the lighting. I kind of like that, that's helpful. So the smooth monkey, that's actually pretty good. Now can we save as relief specification? No, I don't want that. What I want to do is, it showed on the website that you could do a depth map from it, and I haven't figured out how to do that. We'll come back to that presently. Right, so what's it doing with the facets? Let's see if we can get in a bit closer. Let's try and adjust the lighting so we can pick some of this up. I think it's still... There's still a kind of... There's a curvature to the planes, which is interesting. You can kind of see that. I mean, it's not treating these as flat, I don't think. I could be wrong on that, but it's getting a kind of, it's got a, I mean, you can kind of see it on the shadows there. There's a distortion here, there's like a curve there, you know, you can see the light catching it. And there as well, these aren't flat planes, they're all curving as they move to meet. You can see that one's kind of beveled. What we'll do is we will do you know what, let's do that now. Right, I'm going to export the relief, let's see what happens. Test models, no, we don't want to, oops, I didn't want to do that. Relief maker, that's a new folder, exported reliefs. Okay, and we'll call this 2 monkeys. What options have we got? We got OBJ, STL. Oh, right, so that's how you do your depth map. Well, let's do it as a depth map, and see what happens. We can have a look at that then. Let's, oh, hang on, what did it say there? It's asking me something in a different way. Choose a mapping from heights to pixel values, linear or gamma. Many common software tools are unable to correctly interpret linear encoding of heights when reading height fields. Consequently, we store PNG and TIFF files with a gamma setting of 2.2 to cater to the majority of tools. That said, other tools ignore gamma encoding and interpret pixel values as linear mapping. As a consequence, there is no generally safe encoding that assures correct interpretation by all readers. Choose the right encoding for your case. Please pass our gamma test type map to the software reading your exported height maps. So, right, okay, so we need to gamma test map. We'll have one of those. Gamma test type map contains 2 ramps marked with set lettering linear and gamma respectively. When interpreted as geometry by your software, one ramp will appear straight, the other will be curved. For subsequent relief height map exports, choose the encoding corresponding to the straight ramp. Okay, interesting. Right, okay. So, right, what I'm going to do, let's save that file, save as relief maker. We'll save our Zbrush file out so I can do something new, and then we'll bring in vector lightbox. We'll bring that up. No, I don't. Okay, right, and then what we'll do is we will bring in an alpha. Oh, come on. Did you know what? I must change my ZBrush settings so that it doesn't click off the blinking menus so quickly. It drives me insane. Right. let's try and make a 3D of that. Right. I'm going to put a depth of 1 in. I'm going to turn the smoothing off. I don't want it double-sided, and I'm going to bring it up as high as possible. Right, let's see what it does. Smooth the mesh border. Okay. Just having to think about it. Right, all right, what have we got? Can we actually see anything from this? Right. Render pass. Difficult to tell. Do you know what? Let's just, maybe it needs a bigger depth. I'm so used to doing everything at the lowest possible depth. Right, well, let's thinking about that. Let's pop back to Relief Maker. Okay. So interesting. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to export that. We've done the 2 monkeys as a TIFF, but I'm going to take it out as an OBJ as well. And we'll see what. Okay, so it's giving me another export box. It's cropping up on my other window. Export dense height field, decimated background, foreground only. Let's try it with foreground only. One of the issues I get, particularly with really complex organic models, is separating them from the background. I'm going to do it with the background as well, and we'll see what it looks like. So I'm going to go dense height field. Let's try that and see what happens. Right, let's see what Zbrush has done. Yeah. Okay, I mean, I will be brutally honest and say that neither of those. Oh yeah, one's curved. So the gamma one is a curved one. Would you agree with that? I think I would agree with that. I would say that the gamma certainly has a curve to it. You can see in there. And the linear one is flatter. So we need to go with linear. Okay. No, I don't want to save that, do I? No. I wanted to open my other one. No. Relief Maker modeling canvas. So if we go back to Relief Maker and file, export relief, and we were going to do it as a TIFF map, weren't we? And when it asked, we were going to go linear because that's the one that was straight. So we're seeing, so there's some interesting things going on here. It's kind of hinting that there's more consideration to what's actually going on in the projection and the subsequent models than maybe whether Zbrush is doing that just kind of in the background, and they don't want to give you any more horrible UI things to think about, because Zbrush seems to have enough horrible UI things to think about as it is. I don't know, or whether Zbrush doesn't kind of think about those things. Who knows? Who knows? Interesting. I mean, we'll have a chat with the guys from Alibre, from Relief Maker, after all this, and we'll see what's what. Right, let's see if we can. Yeah, we got those. So what I'm going to do is, where's my monkeys? I do love a monkey. Right, let's put that back in. Grab a monkey. Come on. Grab that monkey. Right, how did we have it on there? So he was turned quite a long way away, wasn't he? I mean, I'm always looking for something a little bit more user-friendly than Zbrush. If it wasn't for the fact that it handles so many polygons so easily, I would kind of ditch it. because it drives me insane. Right. Do the same thing again. Project bas-relief, relief. See what happens. Right. Turn the monkeys off. Okay, what do we think? I mean, that's big, isn't it? Let's drop there. Size. Let's push it down a little bit. Try and make it fair. I mean, I'm not doing a scientific comparison here. I'm just having a play. Yeah, I mean, what do we think? Zbrush seems to be. I mean, I'll have a play. What I might do is a little follow up, and play with Zbrush's parameters just to try and make it a bit more of an even race. I mean, we're getting a lot of pixelation on the edges here. That's quite ugly. And we're not getting that on Relief Maker at all. I fancy that. Yeah, I mean, we're still getting it. You know, there's a lot of chattering going on around there, and that's even with it being pushed down. I mean, that's quite unpleasant, and that would take a fair bit of cleaning up. I mean, it's curving the planes, which I know I kind of expected it to do. Yeah. There's definitely a bow there, isn't there? And it's kind of curving in. I think, and I have a theory, but I have a bit of a theory about this, which you can all kind of agree or disagree with, which I'll come to maybe afterwards or maybe in a separate video. I fancy, if I'm honest, I think it's better. I mean, this is just an opinion piece, you know. I'm not being paid by anybody. I'm just doing this for the fun because I was asked to, and that's really nice to be asked to do something. And I think it's nicer. I think this is much more usable and off the bat, and certainly smoother. It's the thing with the planes. I mean, that's just kind of life, isn't it? Right, I'm going to get rid of these. I did see somewhere. Delete selected assets. There we go. Right. Add from file. Let's try something totally different. I'm going to bring in a sphere, and I'm going to bring in the Xwing. Yeah, there's things you never thought you'd say. I'm going to shrink that down a bit. Okay. I think UI and sort of ergonomics, is that the right term? Ergonomics. There's always things in these bits of software that just kind of, you know, when you're trying to work at speed, they always get a bit awkward. I mean, I think it's one of the reasons I like Blender so much, is that it just kind of, you know, the environment moves with you. It's the keyboard shortcut thing. Once I got my head around using the keyboard for everything, it just makes life so much easier and so much quicker. And I think it's something that, you know, certainly could be other people need to take a look at. Right, Xwing, and a nice planet for the Xwing to fly away from. I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's see. I'm going to move that back. So we're going to give it a bit of distance and see what happens. See how it handles. Distance. How's that look? Escape from Yavin 4. Looks pretty cool to me. I'm going to keep everything else as it was. Generate the relief. Okay. Ooh. What's it done to the curve, to their ball? Well, it's kind of, yeah, that's fair enough. It's kept it fairly flat. I mean, it's squashed it basically. I think. Yeah, I have a theory. The Xwing is not bad. It's bending again where some of these surfaces meet. You can see this kind of distortion, and I have a feeling. I'll tell you what, I have a feeling. But let's do a little test. Right, so I'm going to make that a bit bigger, and I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to bring the Xwing in front of it. Okay, so now we've got. Oh, it's not a huge amount of distance, but you get the idea. So we're going to try and do a superimposition like that and see what happens. Right, keep everything else the same. We're just going to hit generate relief and see what it does. See how it feels. Right, so it's not bad, but you see what it's doing where the Xwing meets the planet is the whole thing is kind of, let's take a depth map out. Xwing and planet. We decided to choose linear, didn't we? Yeah. Right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in here, and I'm just popping into. Just popping into, and it's just kind of vanished. Where's it gone? Where's my, oh, there it is. Right, I'm going to open this with, let's just open this with Affinity. Bear with, I'll have a little look, and loading fonts, so many fonts. See what it looks like. Right, okay. So we can see, let's just play these curves a little bit. Let's see if we can push this up and see what's going on. Yes. So where the Xwing is hitting the sphere in the background, the sphere is bowing inwards to meet that bit of modelling. If we head over back up to this, you can kind of see it actually. Yeah, now you can see it. You see what's happening. It's actually, so the software is fine with it's doing quite a neat job of it all the way along, and we saw in the last one that it kind of handles the sphere perfectly well and create any major issues. But as soon as it hits another piece of modelling that's in front of it, yeah, look, it bows down to meet it. It kind of the sort of layering of one object in front of another seems to freak it out. And I'm gonna try this with Zbrush, because if I remember correctly, no, I don't want a Spitfire. Zbrush does the same thing. And I think there's an issue here with the way that, not the way that the software, the software is doing what it's. Oh, it's me. Right. Not an issue with the way. I'm not meaning to sort of badmouth anybody's software, because I can write this, but I think that the software is working on an assumption that, hang on, I can't do this and think at the same time. Right. Okay, let's just do this, see what happens. Oh, I'll turn those off. Yeah, it's doing the same thing. Yeah, right. Okay. I mean, I'm on a very low relief count, so we'll kind of give ZBrush the benefit of the doubt here because I haven't played with any of these settings. So we've got a horrible offset in the edge, a horrible ramping, and it's only at 1000. And then we've got the quality set right low. Do you know what? Let's bung that back up a little bit. Ooh, not that. Let's bung that up a bit and just do the whole thing again because that's not fair. Not a fair comparison. While I try to explain what I think is going on, I think that the software is behaving a bit like a rookie modeler. When people start to, I did it, and most people do when they start to model in relief, if you're doing something like a face, like a front-on face, and you assume the nose is going to be the sort of bit that's furthest out, and it's not necessarily the case. It's not going to stick out in the way that it does on a 3D object. And what some people do is when they're sculpting that, they bow in the face to meet the nose because they start sort of, they kind of start at the closest points and work backwards, so you get these kind of faces that look like they've been caved in with the nose sticking out the middle. And I think this is doing the same thing. So I mean, we've got higher resolution, but we've still got some really nasty chatter around the edge of there. It's still doing it. It's not as pronounced. I mean, I think I've altered a setting there that I didn't mean to, and it's giving it this horrendous. I don't even know why you would want to have this on a model, but you can see the you can see it bowing. If I do a quick grayscale, yeah, you can see it. So it's like an ambient occlusion around the edge of the Xwing. So it's bowing the model in, and I think what it's doing is, yeah, you can see it. I think it's the software is behaving like a rookie modeler. It doesn't quite understand how to interpret the distance between, say, like, you know, this bit. Let's go back to Relief Maker. It's a bit easier. You know, the distance between, you know, we are talking about a visual distance, and there's actually a spatial distance between these two objects, and it doesn't know how to handle what happens when these two things sort of come into conflict, because it's thinking about, oh, I've got this 3D object and I've got to squash it flat, and I've got this 3D object and I've got to squash it flat, and I've got to keep the whole thing within a certain parameter. So, actually, in order to make this work and this work, something's going to have to give. And so it's going, oh, if I dip this down a little bit, then that gives me room to do the rest of this. And I wonder if this is a function of 3D to relief algorithms working on the basis of 3D models first, and trying to think about how to take a 3D model and squash it in a way that's, you know, if you take a 3D model and you just squash it, it doesn't work. So they're doing something different, but they're still working from the basis of, this is a 3D model and I've got to squash it flat, where relief sculpting starts from the other end. It's kind of more, it's more like drawing than it is sculpting, in a sense, in that you go, well, this is flat and I've got to make it look 3D, rather than this is 3D and I've got to make it look flat. And I wonder if there's a inherent issue, because writing this software, you know, nobody approaches this software from the point of view of, actually, I'm starting flat and I'm going to make it look 3D, which would be more interesting in some ways. If you were able to have a 3D scene and take a render of it, like we would do in, let's get rid of that and put our scene back in. Why do you keep coming back? Bugger off. And then just kind of hit, you know, boink. Thing is, you get cast shadows and you can turn those off. But, you know, you've got a 3D scene where objects are lit, and actually use that as the basis for how the modelling is created, that the sense of depth and the sense of light and shadow, which is what makes relief sculpting work. So that actually, it's a tonal value thing. So the tonal values at the edge of this sphere are the same as some of the tonal values here. At the moment, it's thinking of these as 3D objects that have a distance and a size that may be very different from each other, and it's getting confused. Where actually, if you said just think about the tonal values and think that the tonal value of this curve is the same or not far off from the tonal value of this curve in here. I've undone me render now. And that actually maybe you use the tonal values. It's almost like a sort of reverse depth mapping kind of thing. But anyway, I think it's interesting that seems to happen in all of the sort of variations of this kind of software. Because I've been using Blender's mist pass quite a lot to do the same thing, so making a CNAP and then using a mist pass where it's not a depth map, it's not based on the depth of the objects, it's more based about the sort of the space within a scene, so it doesn't try to squash these things flat. It makes a grayscale without sort of trying to combine two objects together. Okay, that's interesting stuff. So I think, initially it's doing some really, really interesting stuff. It's quite user-friendly and it all sort of makes sense. I think what I'm going to do is have a little play with some of the other parameters, because I've been going on a while and it's probably time I stopped. Explore some of the more detailed parameters of it and come back with a second video. But at this stage, it's certainly doing something interesting. It's certainly doing something that would be useful. At first glance, it's doing something that it feels like it's easier to work with than Zbrush's version of this. It can't be less easy to work with than Zbrush's version of this, because Zbrush is it's just horrible, isn't it? Horrible in so many ways. Right, let's try one more. Let's try one more before we go. Teapot and a Rolex. And all the same parameters. We are just going to hit generate relief and see what happens. Let's see how it plays with some of these things. See, that I think is pretty nifty. We've still got this distortion, and I'll have a chat to the guys at Alibre about what they think about that. But if you pull back from it a little bit, bearing in mind that we're zooming right up into this, we're being kind of super critical. But it's not bad. There's a kind of flatness in there. It's picked up all of the detail in this. What's it like how deep is it? That's pretty shallow. Actually, the Rolex has worked better than the Teapot, I think. The Teapot, because it's fat and round, it's kind of pushed it flat, and it goes, it's got to have this fat and round bit in the middle. It's like, no, it doesn't. It's relief. You could, this should be more or less flat, and it's what happens at these edges that make it look 3D. You can see it's completely fried over the handle. Didn't understand that, and it doesn't understand the Teapot lid either, because there isn't a sort of a line to help it understand what's going on. So it's sort of just put a dip in there, which is a bit uncomfortable. And the same thing here. Look, it doesn't seem to understand that gap. But having said that, first glance, first play, there is something here that is definitely usable, and certainly would take less work to kind of tidy up than I think anything I've had off Zbrush. What I will probably do next as well is take some of these reliefs, and in fact I'll tell you what we'll do, one last thing while we're here, because what we didn't do was try bringing in let's get rid of the ball because the ball sucks. Right, note to self, change that setting. Exported relief, let's have a look. Two monkeys with background. Okay, let's see what happens. See how big it is to start with. 4 mil. Okay. Well, that's pretty, that's pretty good. I think we could, we could work with that. Let's push this height up a little bit, see what happens. I mean, it's, what's that? What's that in the middle? It's a thing. A thing in the middle. Oh, do you know what that is? Do you know what that is? I know what that is. That is the table from my. Oh no, it's not. It's not the table. It's the. Okay, so that has come in huge. All right, yeah, I'm with it. That's actually the plate we've been working on. So that's come in giant. Yeah, there we go. That's what it was. I thought it was the plane from my Zbrush model that I got left behind, but no. Okay. I mean, that's kind of bottoming out there a little bit. This works really well, I think. I think that's, that's totally usable. It's quite sensitive. It's, it's good facets. It's these flat planes. Does not like the flat planes. But it's there. I mean, it's there, and the quality's good. There's no chattering. Let's see what happens if we bring in the one that didn't have the background. And find out where it's gone. Yeah. Okay, so there's something obviously gone below. So it's kind of clipped it at Z0. And it's struggled to, I mean, bearing in mind that I've started it on something quite low, which I imagine it's probably geared towards doing stuff that's maybe a bit higher, which would give it more of a let's try it with a bevel. Okay, let's see what happens. So a bevel gives it a bevel. So it gives it a bit of a lift, which will probably help with clipping it from the background. Let's try a tiny bevel and let's see what happens. Yeah, it's definitely giving it an edge, isn't it? So that's probably going to help us exporting it without the background. Let's try it and see. File, export relief. Teapot. Linear. No, I didn't want to do that today because it's done that as, it's doing that as a TIFF. I don't want that. 3D mesh object, Teapot. No, because I'm in the wrong folder. Sorry. Right. Foreground only. Let's have a look. Let's see what it does. Pop back to Zbrush. Teapot. Yeah, it's still. So it's given us a kind of. Yeah, you can see it has given a little bevel around the edge. It's given us a lip, like a little border of. That would be a bit of a pain to deal with. I don't want to deal with that. So let's. Okay, generate relief. let's just bung it out without. Yep. Dense height field. I'm not even going to go near decimated background because I know exactly what that's going to do, and that's going to turn this background into a series of massive triangles, which causes so many problems when it comes to adjusting models, because you've got this kind of dense mesh, and then it suddenly at some point on the edge goes to a massive triangle, and they distort horribly, horribly, and it's one of the one reasons that I end up still using Zbrush for sculpting, because Zbrush can keep a sort of even grid of polygons at a high kind of density. I mean, you know, the sort of, if you're making something for SFX or anything like that, you're using low poly wherever you can, because it doesn't matter, because nobody's really going to see it. You're just going to kind of, you're going to use the sort of details of a high poly model, and you're going to bake them in the textures and the shading, so nobody really cares that it's low poly, so it doesn't really have an issue. But for relief modeling, you know, to have big triangles and little triangles, or big squares and small squares, and to have that kind of optimized topology is really horrible, because it means you can't add detail where you need to. And it's the only reason I end up using Zbrush all the time, is because I can just keep a square of a grid, a really fine grid of polygons, and you know, Zbrush will handle all sorts of you know, high poly stuff without falling over. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push that up a bit. I'm going to do this. Now we're going to turn perspective off. Turn it off. No. And then let's just mask off. Let's see if we can mask and see how it. So it's kind of, yeah. What I'm trying to do is mask out the, let's see if we can get it a bit closer. Let's see what it's picking up on there. I mean, it's not bad. How many polys in this? 4.1. So it's reasonably high polygon. Where's masking gone? Where's my masking? There it is. Shrink that back, sharpen it. So we could, yeah, I mean, it would be easy enough to separate that from the background. That's quite clean. In fact, let's do that. No, where have I gone? Not deformation, not masking, polygroups from masking. And then we'll turn that off. See what it looks like. Yeah, it's not bad. It's a bit jaggy, but what I would tend to do then is bring that into Blender, and once I've got it all lined up and scaled, it's just, Blender has this lovely function where you can select all the verts around the edge of a model and just automatically scale them to a single point, and it just makes life so much easier. It's great. Okay, yeah, interesting. Let's clip that a little bit. Let's clip there a little bit. So what we might have to do is I might have a play with the unconstrained version, and we'll see what it does. In fact, let's do it right now. Over here, unconstrained, it's actually gone shallower, and it's still showing the same. It's still throwing up the same issues, but yeah. So I think at first glance, and I will come back to this for a second vid, I think, once I've had a proper play with it. First glance, there's some really interesting stuff going on. I think there's, in terms of tidying up stuff once you've squashed it, I would say, for me, this feels like it might have an edge over what is going on in Zbrush. Feels like the way it would slot into a workflow is pretty straightforward. There's a lot of control over what the objects are doing in space. You know, this is quite a nifty way of approaching it. That you can just, you know, I mean, it works like a 3D modeling software, doesn't it? You can just sort of bung these things in, move them around. That feels quite intuitive. And the availability of the parameters seems fairly straightforward. There's a couple of things here I want to play with that I don't really understand yet. But there's I can definitely see how it will either slot into a bigger workflow. So I can definitely see how I would use it, take in sample models. You know, am I gonna sculpt a teapot? You know, in relief, probably not. Now I'm just going to do this, and then tweak it where it doesn't quite. Or I'll make a teapot and put a little bevel in there so that it has something to key off. You know, maybe the same there. So I think there's a lot of use for it. I think it seems pretty seamless. Pretty easy to get your head around in terms of, you know, there's not a huge amount of parameters to play with, not a huge amount of stuff to go wrong. I think where it starts to fall over is where all of these things fall over. So that's not a criticism, that's just an observation that there is something fundamental about the way 3D software considers relief. It's the same way that AI considers. Well, it doesn't. AI doesn't consider relief. It thinks it does, but it doesn't. You know. So I think definitely if you are either a hobbyist or you are, you know, a sort of commercial professional modeler like I am, I think there's a place for this. Definitely worth having a play, and I would say I'll come back with, after a further dig, with some more informed commentary. So yeah, definitely worth catching up on that if this is something that you might want to fit into your workflow. So hit a like or a subscribe, so you get a ping when the next one comes out. Great stuff. Awesome.